This conference will now be recorded.
We move into managerial accounting, and to assist with our understanding of a managerial accounting, we have a project with this course. We have a project. And this project requires a number of things. One of those is that you've got to make something. So last semester, a team bought the raw materials and made this birdhouse. So each team has to pick something that they're going to make and make this item to tell me what you're going to make with an image in 2 weeks. And that's 25 points on a 100-point project. You simply have to tell me what you're going to make. So there are two aspects of it. Number one, regularly, physically making the product. You have to do that. Then afterwards, you have to make a prototype of your project. And this is made with a 3D printer, which is located on the third floor of my office complex. So the team will have to schedule a meeting with the student assistants and make an image, because manufacturing is moving where, if programmed correctly, the 3D printer can make this. 3D printers can make weapons of war and everything. And so that's where we're moving. And so we want to make sure that you're up to date in terms of the things, where things are going manufacturally and the environment that you're going to be working in. And today, of course, we start managerial accounting. So let me see if I can share my screen to introduce you. So as we move to managerial accounting, different from financial accounting, where first of all, we had a service company and we performed the service. In my classes, we uh, had a rental car company that rented cars out, and then we bought a product and sold it. We bought a product and then sold it. In managerial accounting, we have to make the product. Okay, we have to create the cost of the product. So nobody tells us what that cost is. We have to determine it. In looking at the managerial accounting cycle, everything starts with that same equation: assets equal liabilities plus stockholders' equity. And the managerial accounting cycle, first thing we got to do is determine the unit product cost and selling price. And we're going to spend a week on that, because if this is wrong, then a lot of other things are going to be wrong. Next, we journalize journal entries. We post them to the ledger, and we have some new accounts: raw materials inventory and work in process inventory, along with the finished goods inventory. So now we have 3 inventory accounts, and we have a manufacturing overhead account. We prepare a trial balance, and then we prepare the financial statements. And we have 2 new statements that we will learn how to prepare. First of all, the cost of goods manufactured statement. This is the statement that calculates the total and unit cost of goods that are made. And then we calculate the cost of goods sold. We layer all of that on top of financial accounting, which is the income statement, statement of retained earnings, balance sheet, statement of cash flows. So the manufacturing company uh, does all of these things, but also it has to have statements on what it costs and how much the items, and what did they sell. So this is why we spent this preliminary period reviewing financial accounting, because you now have a manufacturing accounting, which at the end of the day, you still got to do an income statement, statement of retained earnings, balance sheet, and statement of cash flows, and prepare the closing interest. Let's talk about the second step, which we'll be into next week, which is the managerial accounting journal entries. Everything in accounting begins with a journal entry. And we're going to set those entries up in stages. Stage one, where we buy the raw material. Stage two, where we transfer cost of work in process. Stage three, where we transfer the cost of completed items to finished goods. Stage four is where we sell the item. And stage five is where we pay selling and administrative expenses. The first thing you do in manufacturing accounting is you buy raw materials, which is what you're going to have to do with your project. You're going to have to buy the raw materials to make that product. When we buy the raw materials, this is the journal entry. We debit raw materials inventory and we credit accounts payable. We make that journal entry all the time. That's how it looks. We have to calculate the amounts. The second set of inventory journal entries relate to making the items. So here we on the production floor. And there's always three costs that we'll be working with. There's always three costs. First of all, direct materials. Secondly, so this looks like a manufacturing plant. Maybe an automobile manufacturing plant where they're making an engine. That's the raw material. Then we have the labor. These are the workers who are doing the work on that particular piece of raw material. Then we have the plant overhead, all of the equipment, the utilities, the property tax, all of the building, all of the other costs. And all three of those costs have to go into determination of the cost of the item. So you'll be seeing this from now on: direct materials, direct labor, and overhead. When we're in stage three, we make those journal entries. We debit work in process every time. We debit work in process for the raw materials. We debit it for paying the workers. We debit it for the overhead. When we finish the item, which is our goal, we transfer the items to finished goods so we can ship them for selling. Our journal entries, we debit finished goods inventory, and we credit work in process inventory. So we'll be going through these stages all the time. Stage one, what are the journal entries? Stage two, and those journal entries are on the Excel sheets that we will be working with. And then in stage three, we transfer the items from work in process to finished goods. In stage four, that's when we sell the item and we debiting either accounts receivable or cash, and we crediting sales. And we debiting cost of goods sold and crediting manufacturing overhead. And these are the journal entries. So, the journal entries that are listed here, and of course, this item should be in course content and it's in the primer. Journal entries stay the same. You just got to calculate the journal entries. Then we pay selling, administrative expenses, and dividends, which is what we reviewed at the beginning of the course. We have a manufacturing company chart of accounts. The same with the added accounts: raw materials, inventory, work in process, finished goods. Those are current assets. Then cost of goods sold and manufacturing overhead. Those are expense accounts that we add in. And with our information, there's three statements, and on your midterm, you got to be able to prepare these statements. First of all, cost of goods manufacturer statement, direct materials, direct labor, the overhead, and beginning working process less ending working process, cost of goods manufactured. And we'll be working on that statement uh, for about a week, starting next week. Then the cost of goods sold, a much simpler statement. The finished goods inventory that we had at the beginning, we bring down the cost of goods manufactured. We subtract out the finished goods in the inventory to get our uh, unadjusted cost of goods sold. And then we'll make an adjustment for overhead to get the adjusted cost of goods sold. So these two statements are required on the midterm. They're required on the midterm. Then, of course, the income statement, sales less cost of goods sold, gross margin, less the expenses, net income. So that's where we'll be going from now through midterm. So that's a lot. But all we're working with today is determination of the unit, product, cost, and selling price. Determination of the unit, product, cost, and selling price. And Monday will be on the same item, and either late Monday, but probably first thing Wednesday. First thing Wednesday, we'll have a quiz on determination of unit, product, cost, and selling price. We'll have a quiz. Are there any questions? Okay, I tell you to make a
This
copy.
this document that you're looking at, what is that under?
Should be under managerial accounting or cost, a job order costing, and of course it's on the primer. On this primer here is in the primer. And of course I tell you to make a copy of this document, and you also were supposed to make a copy of this worksheet so you could work along with me. So you should have copies of both of these documents so you aren't flipping back and forth as much. But let's look at the primer in any book. And of course, the primer does not exist until I make it. Then I have to come up with a cost, and my publisher, really comes up with the cost of the primer, sells it to the university, and the university uh, makes a write up on it and sell it to you. And as I told you, these are my notes. I don't get paid for these, but I created these so you could learn the course better. But if I'm making a book, what are the two major costs in making a book? If I make a book, what's the two major costs? What do you think are the
Paper and
major?
ink.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Something paper and ink. Those are the two items. And we've got to go through and come up with a unit cost to make this book. So hopefully you're working along with me. Just see if I can get my spreadsheet up. So you should have your spreadsheet out and ready to work along with me. Does everybody have the spreadsheet out? That's not the one. Yeah. I think this is the one you should have out. And so we're going to go through, and we're just looking at the first book. And of course, eventually you will have this full sheet filled out. And always I'm looking at, and what you'll be testing on next week, what's the unit cost, what's selling price, and what is the predetermined overhead rate. There are always three costs that we work with whenever we make something. First of all, the direct material. What are the direct material costs for the item? The second is what's the direct labor on that item. These are direct costs. We can determine those fairly easy. Then we have the manufacturing overhead, all the other costs that we got to somewhere get in here on a unit basis. And then there's another item we calculate, which is the predetermined overhead rate, to come up with a journal entry that we utilize when we make our journal entries. So those are the three items: unit cost, selling price, and POR. So, and the selling price is always a multiple. Is always a multiple of the cost. But what's the cost? For us to make money, we got to sell it for more than we paid for it. So Joan Sunson said
What
that
does
the
what does POR stand for?
predetermined overhead rate, we'll talk about it later. Don't worry about it just yet.
Okay.
Now, the first item that we have is paper. So for my book, let's assume it takes one ream of paper. The paper costs $15. So going to the spreadsheet, the first item, our quantity is 1. The unit cost is 15. So the paper in this book is $15. Are there any questions? If it was 2, just putting dollars in here for some reason. Uh, so let's just may just continue to put that 1 in there. And it's going to put that dollar sign in there, but the dollar sign really should be here. If this was 2, though, then our cost would be 30. If it was 3 reams of paper, our cost would be 45. Any questions? Let's move to the next item, the ink. Now, there's 2 ways, and earlier on, I would buy an ink cartridge, 1 ink cartridge, maybe 2 to print the book, and I will be here. Now, typically, I'm going to buy an ink cartridge that will print more than 1 book. It'll print 50 books. Okay. So if the ink cartridge will, for $400, will print 50 books, what then is the cost of the ink cartridge for a book, for 1 book? What would be the cost of that ink cartridge? So whenever I have the situation where I buy raw material and it'll make more than 1 finished product, I'm going to go through and make a calculation where I look at, I'm going to go here to situation 4, and I'm going to put in the total product cost, which is $400. And I'm going to divide that by the quantity that can be made, 50. That is, I paid $400 for 50 things. So if I paid $400 for 50 things, what did each one cost? You should have $8.
Why
So
did you put it under raw material for?
Because in raw materials 1, 2, and 3, when I have raw materials 1, 2, and 3, I'm using all of this raw material in one book. Okay. And it could be 2 or 3, but all the raw material is utilized. And I may have a number of those. I just got space for it. But in the situation where I have the raw material ink, but it's going to be used over 50 books, I come back, I start those at 4 and 5, and my calculation is different. The unit cost, so I come up with my total cost, 400. I divide it by 50, the number of books that can be produced, so I get an $8 cost. So when you're working the problem, you have to determine whether your raw material comes in the 1, 2, or 3 category or the 4 or 5 category. And so when I add these together, 15 and 8, my total is what?
23. But how would you differentiate that?
You got to read it and determine it. You got
I
to
don't know.
read.
That
You got.
lost me. I'm not gonna lie.
You have to read it. Let's look at it. I'm using 1 ream of paper. The ream costs $15. I'm using all of that paper. It's going to go into the book. So I'm multiplying. I'm in the 1, 2, 3 category. In the second category, I pay $400 for the ink cartridge. I need the amount for 1 book. So since $400 will print 50 books, I divide 400 by 50, and I get the cost of the ink. All of this ink that's in 1 book is only $8. So just think about it a little bit. We'll work enough problems so you'll be familiar with it. So we're following through with the example. So we only had 2 raw materials. Uh, and of course, if you're picking out the product you can make, the more raw materials you got, the more of this you got to do. So you want a simple and basic raw material product that you pick out. But once again, that's also why you're making the product. So you'll see all of this with your product because you have to make those determinations. Is your product? I don't do anything on it. You make it, you come up with the cost and the selling price and everything else. Let's move to labor. And the workers are paid $20 an hour and they can produce 40 books in an hour. Okay. So the workers are paid $40. They can produce, excuse me, the workers are paid $20. They can produce 40 books. Okay. So if uh, they can make 40 items in an hour and I pay them $20, how much of that goes into 1 book? So I'm going to divide 40 into 20. I'm going to divide 40 into 20, and I'm going to come up with a unit labor rate of 50 cents. This is a situation where, now why do you want to do that? Clear contents. When you're working with Excel, if something jumps up that's not there, sometimes you just go and you have to go and clear the contents because it might already have a formula in there. Let's see if the 50 cents stays. No, it's not gonna. It is ingrained in here pretty hard. So I'm gonna clear the contents again. And I'll put my 50 cents here. It stays there. So I'd have to go through and clear out a lot of things to do that. And I'll do that later. But of course, this is your Excel sheet that you'll be working on, and you modify it as you need. You modify it as you need. Any further questions on that? So the labor in there is going to be 50 cents. Now, when I make this book, and these are estimated costs, there's the rent of a facility that is in, the utility costs, the taxes, the insurance, the supplies, depreciation, miscellaneous expenses. Now, my book does take glue, but I put it in supplies. I don't put very minor costs in there. It's only the major costs. Because this book has to be ready, you know, in the July time frame, I won't have all of these costs in yet. So I estimate these costs. So these are estimated costs. So just keep in mind that this is the estimated manufacturing overhead, and it's 30,000. And so to come up with the estimated manufacturing overhead, I'm going to look at my total manufacturing overhead, which I estimate to be $30,000. And I need to know how many I'm making. And I got an assumption here that I'm going to make 1,000 books. I'm going to make 1,000 books. So my MOH is the 30,000 divided by 1,000. So that should be 30. Any questions? So what I have to do now is to add up all of these costs. The raw materials, 23, the labor, 50 cents, and the MOH, 30. And when I add those costs up, my total product cost is going to be what? 53.50. The 53.50 consists of the raw materials, the labor, and the overhead. Those are always the three costs. And that's what you'll be calculating at the start of every problem. The raw materials, the labor, and the overhead. Any questions? I add them together. It says
Where,
myself, yeah,
where did you put 53 at? Total overhead? Or
I put in $30 for the overhead.
yeah, but where did you put 53? 50.
Up here all the way to the top. Where that, so at the top of the worksheet is always your unit cost. Get those three costs, you add them together, and you put them right here.
Okay.
My selling price multiple is 2. And I'm going to multiply, not divide, to get my cost. A number of students like to divide this, but we multiply the multiple times the cost. And so if I do that, what's my selling price going to be? What is my selling price going to be?
107?
107 sounds like a good number to me. So you now have this down. Are there any questions? Are there any questions?
No.
Can we come up with any estimated selling price as long as you're just making a profit?
Yeah, you would look at what's happening in your industry for your product. It might be the multiple might be 1, it might be 2, it might be 3. Okay. So let's look at what you all gonna do next then. So you all don't have any questions and you know how to do this. You're gonna come to this example 2 and make these calculations. Here are your assumptions. Here's your ink. Here's your paper. Here's your labor rate. I like direct labor production. Actual MOH, estimated MOH, selling price multiple 3, quantity is 10,000. Get to work and determine for me unit cost, selling price, and POR. And I'll give you all, how much time y'all need, Ebony?
I don't know, because we're really still learning. Like, I don't know. I can't put a time frame on it. In order for me to really just, it's not hard, but we just learned this today. So
You just learned it today? You didn't read about it last night?
I did not. I'm not gonna lie.
Okay, well, take, say, 15 minutes, review this material, then go through and attempt to make this calculation. This is what your quiz will be like next week. You'll be given this information and told to calculate these 3 things. Right now, we're just doing unit cost and selling price. Are there any questions by anyone?
Yes, I'm sorry. For the example we just did, what was the POR?
We haven't gotten to the POR yet because you all are just
Oh,
learning.
oh, okay. Because on this example, you said do all three, so that's why I was
I mean,
confused.
we'll come back to the POR a little bit, but I want to get this clear first.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
This conference will now be recorded.
Any questions on this raw material cost?
It's not necessarily a question, but I was just confused where to put the numbers for the next one. So,
Uh,
but I know now.
you can, yeah, so yeah, it's 1, 2, 3. So I'm just coming down and you can always use a different line or take out the first one, whatever. But so I worked on this today. So we made to go through this easier. Now, what's our labor going to be?
For $40 an
40.
hour.
So the rate is 40. We can put the 40 here. And our productivity is how many per hour?
10.
And
10 books an hour. So what's our unit labor cost going to be? Unit labor rate going to be?
25 cents.
4. Oh, 2. Oh, it's not 4?
Percent, right? Or 4.
Okay, so the labor rate is 40. You're paying them $40 an hour. They can make 10 books per hour. So if you bought 10 things for $40, how much will each one cost?
4.
Or
Okay, so let's put the 4 here. So now we have the raw material cost 12. We have the labor cost 4. Now we need the manufacturing overhead. What's our total MOH, and we should have used which cost?
The estimated one.
The estimated 150,000.
50,000.
How many were we making?
10,000.
So notice the more you make, what
The
the
cheaper it
lower
gets.
that cost is going to be. So what's total MOH? I mean unit
Fif-
MOH 15.
15. Yeah.
So we add those together, 12,
31.
4, and 15. We get 31 as our unit cost. And what's our selling price multiple?
62.
Now the multiple is the what? 3.
Oh,
Multiple is
yeah.
3.
93.
So our selling price is 93. Are there any questions? We might be ready for the quiz next class period.
Whoa, whoa.
Relax, relax. Let's bring it back some.
Oh, Miss Aisha, I hadn't heard from you recently.
I just
Okay.
asked you a question like a couple minutes ago.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I have the screen up and I don't see who's asking. Okay, let's work one more. We're gonna do 3.
All
Now
right.
let's look at okay, but before, so that's what you're doing next. 3. We have our class homework assignment. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 exercises that we got to work on. Team leaders, you're going to send this in to me with every member on your team doing at least 2 of these. Every member on the team has to do 2, but the team should go through all of those. Okay?
Professor, before you
All
move
right.
on, I want to ask, are you available tomorrow for office hours?
I'll be there at between 12:30 and 1 all the way to 2:30.
Yes, sir.
Okay? So you see your homework assignment. Let's do next time.
And when you say like 2 per person, do you mean like A, B, or you mean like 10, 5?
A, B.
Okay.
Why you think I'm at least 2 per person, and the team needs to go over all of them. Uh, because it's different situations. So you need one down here at the 10:7, and you need one up here somewhere. Then there are different things that happen. So to look at this next setup, I want you to work 3, and I'll give you 15 minutes. 3 is worded a little differently in certain respects. So you got to read 3 and then go and work 3. And of course, you know that on the Excel sheet, you'll be going what? To area 3. Are there any questions? Okay, I'll give you it's about 12 minutes on 3.
Are you gonna be posting these recordings by any chance?
Who said that? Aisha again?
Aisha, it's always me. It's always me.
Always you. Are you going to look at it if I record it?
I always look at it.
I will try to get it up sometime tonight. It's a 4K recording, so I can't just record it as soon as the session is over because they have to go and make a 4K version of it. Then I have to go back in. I'll try to have it up sometime tonight.
Okay, bet. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
This conference will now be recorded.
No, you'll get 30. You'll get 15 times 2.
I thought you divided because on the first one he did 20 divided by 40 and he got 0.5.
Yeah, you divide it if it goes by cost per hour. That's why on the third one it doesn't have cost per hour next to the
That's
15. It
cost per
says
book.
2 hours per book.
Okay, okay.
So since it's 2 hours per book, you gotta multiply the 2 hours because it takes 2 hours to make one book.
Okay, but if that's 30, then how would you is then what's the estimated unit cost? How would you get that? Do you use the
Well, you just add
estimated?
them up. You just add the three parts up to get the estimated unit cost.
Okay.
So what
Okay.
is that? What are the numbers that you got?
For the estimated unit cost, I got 59.
59. So what? 30 plus.
I
For
got
part one,
20
you got
for part
24?
three.
Mm-hmm.
I
30 or
got
20?
I got 20 for part three, 30
Mm-hmm.
for part two, and I
Mm-hmm.
got 9 for part one.
So 5 plus 4. That.
Yeah,
9 for part one. Wouldn't
yeah.
it be 24?
No, because you have two two books for $10. So you gotta divide it to get the price. You get $5 per. That's the unit
Mm-hmm.
cost.
Oh.
Eh,
Oh my gosh. Okay, bet. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Professor Taj.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
With that being said, I think we need Monday to be another practice round, and then we'll be ready to do this as a group.
And I second that. Hmm.
I don't think we're confident yet in doing this. We're still trying to figure it out.
You're still trying to figure it out. Okay. Um, let's look at this and then we go over the things. So in this situation, uh, for the paper, it took 2 reams of paper 10. So the paper's going to be what?
5, right?
Uh,
Or 8,
if you bought 2 items that cost $10 each, how much would that be?
20.
20.
That's
Okay,
20.
you're right.
Okay. So 20.
Then the
One times. Okay. Yeah. Hmm.
Okay.
books cost $400. We could print 100 books. So the cost in the books is what?
4,
That's 4. And so our total raw material cost is what?
24.
You're going to have to be very careful. Read it, think about it. Because if you don't have the cost right, you miss one of these, then your selling price is wrong. And the whole
Hmm.
problem. Okay, let's move to our labor. Okay. And Todd made a very good observation. If you can make more than one book in an hour, you divide. We can make 10 books in an hour, we divide it. But when it takes more than an hour to make a book, we gonna multiply. That is, if someone was paying you $15 an hour and you work 2 hours, how much money you want? If someone was paying you $15 an hour and you work 2 hours, how much
30.
money you want? 30. So you're going to multiply in that situation. So even though the direct labor rate is 15, and even though the productivity rate is 2, uh, we're going to multiply those in this situation to get 30. So you always are going to have to be looking and thinking about what you're doing. Once again, if you miss this, then you've missed selling price and cost. Now the overhead that that should be pretty easy to calculate. We have what?
200,000 estimated MOH.
And the quantity is what?
10,000.
10,000 again. So what then is our unit overhead cost going to be?
20.
I'll take your word for it, 20. So when we add all these costs up,
74.
20, 30, and 24 is 74. I will take your word for it, 74. What's our selling price multiple?
So 296 was 4.
Selling price multiple is 4. So I'll take your word for it. That is 296. Okay. So
Okay,
what you
where do we get for?
selling price
Okay,
multiple
I
is
see it.
4.
I see it. Selling price multiple is 4. Okay.
So then you got to multiply that. So this is the start of every problem for most of the rest of the course. You got to come in and calculate the unit cost and the selling price, and you will use these numbers to make journal entries, so they have to be right. And so that's why rather than just spending one day on this, we're spending 2. And since you said so, then the quiz will be on the next day. Okay, let me do one other thing for our late people. Each team's got to make something. Team last year made this birdhouse. You have to physically make it. And you have to tell me what you're going to make in 2 weeks. This is a 100-point project. The first part of it is telling me what you're going to make. And you not only have to make it physically, you have to go to the 3D printer and make a prototype of it. And the CD printer, 3D printers in my office area, and you have to schedule a time with a student to work with that. That gives the management major something to do to make something on your team.
So we
Financial,
can make anything. It's not like,
you just got to make it.
Do we have to produce stuff to make it? Like,
That's right. That's right. And then you're going to understand what we're doing. You got to buy the raw materials and make it. Because you got
you
to be
really?
able to tell me how much the raw materials cost on your project. And so when we come back after the break, we begin to work directly on that project. And each team is quizzed based on their numbers. So I'll be testing you on how much it costs to make it, uh, how many you need to make to break even, how many you need to make $1 million. All of that's based on your numbers. Then you're doing the prototype because at some point in time, uh, you can program that 3D printer to make this. Okay, you know, it makes AK whatever now and everything. It makes all of that, and so that's the way production is going. So it's moving, and so we want to look at that. Let's look at
so
one
we're
final.
making something assuming that we're going to sell it.
That's right.
Under the assumption that we're going to sell it. Okay.
And the marketing majors on the team has to do a marketing video, so on selling this. So you're going to be presenting all of that. What you made, a marketing video, and you graded on all of that. That is a 100-point project. So as we're going through this material, you'll see more closely, uh, you have a better feel of how it relates to you. So on these homework assignments, get those out. And then I'll be, as Taj did today, I'll be calling on teams. So the appropriate person on that team then will have to come up and explain that calculation of how we got to those first 2 items.
Wait, I thought we were getting one more day of practice and then we were going to do that.
Yeah, we're gonna practice, but you all gonna be doing the talking. So we're going to go through all of these problems, but I'll be calling on a team to do A. And of course, part of your homework grade, of course, is going to be what you is always what you present. So I'm not worried about what you're going to submit. So half of your grade on the homework will be what you submitted. The other half will be when can you present it and explain it in class, next class period. We have 12 of these, I think. So how many teams is it? 3, 4, whatever. So you got to be ready to present 40s for the other half of your grade.
So how do we know which team is doing what?
You'll find out. You should just put out your team supposed to have them all done now. Just do it randomly next time. Have team 2 up first. So you got to go and prep and you got to kind of take it serious because it's the start of the problem, and you can see now. So if you miss anything here, then you miss a whole lot. Okay, let's talk about predetermined overhead rate briefly.
And real quick, for what we just did, you said that if the hours, like per item is more than an hour, we multiply, but if it's an hour, we divide.
If it takes more than an hour to make it, you multiply. But if you can make more than one in an hour, you divide. So, you need to be practicing on all of those. I said work at least 2, but everybody could work most of them. Then you go through and make sure your calculations are correct. Okay. Predetermined overhead rate. We calculate a number for the predetermined overhead rate because there's a journal entry that we need uh, this number so we can estimate the overhead. Remember, we're using estimated numbers, but as we get in production, uh, we got to record the raw materials. We got to record the labor. Then we got to record, okay, how much should the estimated overhead be? And the number here is utilized to do that. So let's go back to our first problem, and we're just going to put these things in here. On the first one we did, we estimated the overhead to be 30,000. So that's the first thing that comes in here, 30,000. Now just put it here. You can put it here on your Excel sheet. Second thing on here is the quantity to be produced. And we said we were making 1,000 books. The third thing is the labor productivity rate. So in this case, in this problem, we said in terms of productivity, we could make 40 items in an hour. We can make 40 items in an hour. Okay, so we can make 40 in an hour. So how many hours is it going to take us to make it? Multiply line 2 times 3 if it takes 1 or more hours. Or if we can make more than 1 in an hour, we're going to divide. So in this case, we can make 40 in an hour, so we be divide. If you divide it to get the labor rate, that is when you got this labor rate, if you divide, then down here on this table, you're going to divide also. So if we divide 1,000 by 40, what do we get?
25.
Okay, that's 25. So our POR is line 1 divided by line 4. So if we divide 30,000 by 25, how much do we get?
1,200.
Take your word for it. 1,200. That's how the POR is calculated. This is the formula. It's done like this all the time. What you got to make sure that you do is you get this number. Okay, this is given. Total overhead, you know. Quantity to be produced, you know. Labor rate productivity. What you got to do is come in 4 and see if you are dividing, as we did here, uh, or will we multiply? Now let's look at the case where we multiply. So let's look at example 2, where you estimate MOH to be 200,000. Okay, so we're going to put the 200,000 here. And the quantity to be produced was 10,000. Okay, so that's going to go on this line. The productivity rate, how many could we make an hour? It took 2 hours per book. So our productivity rate is 2. What we're going to do on line 4, we're going to multiply, because if we got to make 10,000 items and it takes 2 hours per item, we got to multiply 2 times 10. That gives us 20,000. Then we're going to divide the 20,000 into the 200,000. And so that should be what, 10? Is that 10, Tosh?
Yeah, it's 10.
Okay. So you get different numbers. When it takes more than an hour to make something, you're going to have a small number. But if you can make more than one in an hour, you're going to have a large number. And then we'll use this number later when we get ready to make a journal entry. You just mechanically learn to calculate it. So now you know how to calculate the POR. What a smart class this is. So now you can go ahead, when you work through those, calculate the POR. So you'll be explaining to me all 3 of those items. The unit cost, what's the selling price, and what's the POR. Any questions? And this is the first day on it. You know, we're spending more than a day a lot of times. Just like with making journal entries, with making these calculations, they're critical. And so we're spending today, we work all of those problems and go through all of those problems on on Monday. We have a brief quiz. Quiz not going to be but 15 or 20 minutes at the beginning of the hour. And
Do
then
we
we'll,
have class on Monday?
why not?
I thought that was President's Day.
It's a holiday, yeah.
I hadn't been told that we don't have class. We already missed Martin Luther King birthday. So unless something comes up, we'll be having class. But y'all can have your President's Day celebration during the day, though. 6 o'clock, y'all be ready to uh, expand your horizons on managerial accounting and have all these problems work. And even if we have a holiday, the problems are due. That's the due date for it. So you got to get those to me on Monday at 6 o'clock, regardless. But I don't think we celebrate President's Day. Anything else? Okay, so have a good rest of your day, and hopefully, small amount of Valentine's celebration, but then be ready to get back to work tomorrow. So all of this is completed and we're ready to go on Monday. Good night, everyone.
You
Office
said,
hours.
oh,
Office hours should
go
be
ahead, sorry,
something
brother.
like 1 o'clock to 2:30 tomorrow.
Okay, I'll see you tomorrow.
How do I schedule office hours with you?
Okay, I'll be in my office tomorrow, but if you need to talk to me otherwise, you email me and I'll set
I
up a virtual chat
okay.
again
Are you
also.
okay?
So just give me some parameters. Don't be like Stoudemire now, just stand me up all the time.
Oh, no, no, sir. No, sir. I actually do have to talk to you about something serious, though.
Okay, we'll see you tomorrow.
Yes, sir.
All right, night.
Will you be able to post this recording tomorrow or?
Kylie, I will try to get it up tonight. That is, they have convert it to a 4K. So before I
Hmm.
go to bed tonight, if it's done, I'll have it up, later tonight around 11 or so.
All right, I was trying to give you time, but if you could do it tonight, that works better. I'm fine with that. Appreciate it.
Yeah, because I have to go to campus tomorrow. So if I don't do it early, like tonight,
Okay.
then it'll take me long. So I would try to get it up tonight.
Okay. Understandable. Thank you. Have a good
Well,
night.
you too. Nice. Todd, you got this all down now, right?
Oh yeah, this was pretty easy. I understand this.
Sounds
And
good.
and
Sounds
tomorrow I'm gonna come to the office hours to show you my cash flow statements that I
okay.
did for the homework problem.
Okay. You got the right answer?
Well, I didn't look at the one that the girl did, so
But I'm
I
just saying,
don't.
for yours, does yours equal out to the change in cash?
Yeah,
Okay.
but hopefully I did it right.
Okay. We'll see you tomorrow.
Okay, all right. See you tomorrow. Have a good night.
You too. Good night.